Welcome to DroneCast, rethinking public safety one drone at a time, a podcast by DroneSense. We explore real-world applications of drones and emergency response, offering a close examination of evolving trends in drone technology and its impact on public safety.
Welcome to DroneCast, rethinking public safety one drone at a time. I'm your host, Joe Kearns. Today, we'll be diving into the world of drones and firefighting with a very special guest, Coitt Kessler. Coitt brings over 20 years of experience from the Austin Fire Department and now serves as a customer service manager at DroneSense. In his first part of our two-part episode, we'll explore the evolution of drone technology and firefighting, the challenges of implementing drone programs, and the multifaceted application of drones in public safety. So strap in. Get ready for some fascinating insights into how drones are revolutionizing emergency response. Welcome to the show, Coitt. How are you?
Thanks, man. Doing well. Thanks for bringing me here, Joe. I really appreciate it, bud. Thank you.
All right. So to kick things off, we're going to talk a little bit about some drone technology and just general concepts here in fire management and mitigation and using this technology across the board. So to start it off, can you give us an overview of how drone technology is currently being used in firefighting?
Oh, boy. That is a big question. It's all over the place, Joe. So the drone technology or robotic technology for that matter can be, I guess is, depending on where you're at, being used for almost every facet of our response mission. So when I say that, I mean, if a truck goes out the door, the truck is going to go to a car accident, right? That's something we do. There are drones that go ahead of trucks now through drone as a first responder, and they can look to see what those accidents are. We have buildings that catch on fire. We need to be able to get a drone over the top of that. So when we show up on scene, a drone can come out of the box and get over the top of a building, and we can look at all the divisions of the building, all the sides of that building. So immediate response. If we have an active attack, we may want to have a drone both overhead or indoors. If we have a hazardous material event, if we have a maybe Pawpaw walked off into the woods or little Timmy that disappeared on us, we need to go find the missing person. Perhaps it's, the tragedy that's recently unfolded in North Carolina, all throughout our eastern coastline with Hurricane Helene, and we have disaster response. So being able to take care of the people during the event itself. So we've got rain coming down, people getting swept into terrible situations, being able to affect change during the immediate response, but then also after the effect, right? So we got to go back in and we got to do recovery work and we got to do infrastructure inspections. And we want to be able to take the drones and put them overhead to see what happened during that event so we can better prepare for the next one. So, I mean, you can just a list. If you just think when the truck goes out, what we can do with the truck, it's all of that plus.
It's multifaceted. There's a lot. It's not officer or fire department goes to take care of fire. There's just so much now. And it's not just fire mitigation. It's disaster relief, preparation, and recovery and such. It's a lot. And now with this, when did, and let's talk about your time as the red team, right? Let's talk about your time in Austin. When did it start moving into actually using drones? What was that like? What was that transition to bring drone technology in?
It was so bad. Seriously, man. It was awful. So we started our program back in 2014. 2014, that was the Obama administration. And there was actually a lot of national concern with drones being used for purposes of war, right? So we were using Reapers and Predators and a lot of our larger scale aircraft to meet the military mission. These small aircraft that we're looking at now, these little pieces of plastic, they weren't around. In fact, when we started, DJI I think we actually got into this a little bit beforehand, but DJI had just released their Phantom 1. So that was a drone that was being controlled off of a Bluetooth connection with your phone, the controller, and the Phantom 1 that you had to see because it was already off of Bluetooth on your phone. So FPV drones had been into play for a while, the hobbyists, but actually production grade equipment wasn't around. So we came into it really early and that made it horrible. It was absolutely terrible because everybody was worried about us looking into your bedroom, being over your backyard and privacy concerns. I actually had this lady. It was so crazy. I had this lady, we had a Phantom 1 drone out. Phantom 1, we were out trying to figure out how we could all put this into play. And she came up to me and she said, I know you can drop bombs on me. How many bombs can you carry on that thing? And I went, what? Ma'am, I'm a firefighter. Like, where's my fire department shirt? Like, there's nothing here. It was so crazy, but that was where we were at when we started. So we did start very early. I'm very proud of our team that we had. We were able to receive the first certificate of authorization for a COA, for a metro department in the US. And we were able to kind of move this thing forward. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I really appreciate just the effort of the team that I was a part of. At that time, Joe, we actually had to have licensed pilots hold the controllers. So you had to be a private pilot to hold the controllers, and use the drone. So fast forward to the day where you can have, somebody doesn't even have to have their Part 107. You could supervise somebody if you were 107 at holding the controller. But I don't want licensed pilots. All of us had to go through a ground school, private pilot ground school, to get to be on the team. I would never wear my fire department uniform. I wore a red shirt with khaki pants. And the joke was I looked like a tactical Target employee. It was so gross, man. It was so terrible. But we were red. We had to take the sting out of it, take the scary out of it, is what we'd always say. So we went in front of the media, red shirt, red team. It was big changes.
That's really interesting. And being like facing the public and facing like your community and so on, and the change from being in a fireman's suit or a fireman's like chief or guard, and then move to that or a Target employee, but be Team Red. I mean, there's a lot of working with the community and a lot of bringing this technology. Was there a lot of like outreach that you had to do in speaking to the community when you brought this aboard and getting the COA started and all of that? What was it like? I mean, dropping bombs? Like, yeah, tell us more.
So that was one of our phrases we use all the time, was take the scary out of it. The only way we could take the scary out of it was to show up and engage with our public. That was the key. So taking the scary out of it meant that we wore uniforms that didn't really identify us. I mean, it looked like a Target employee that didn't look scary, right? Didn't look official. And we would go out and we would go to media events after media event. Our strategy was we wanted to call the media every time we had an event, training event, operational event, every time we wanted to call the media. When the media stopped showing up, we knew that we had won. When the media got bored and nobody cared, because at first they were like, oh, Austin Fire Department's using unmanned technology. We would never even use the word drones. It was always robotics.
Right. Like, don't get in a car with strangers. But now that's like what our common practice is with any of these rideshare such. Kind of the same, right?
Well, it just changed. That's a great comparison. Yeah. Took the scary out of it. Now you can get in a car with strangers. So that's what we did. In fact, that is how I actually met the founder and co-founder of DroneSense. I was wearing my blue uniform. In that time I was wearing my Class A uniform, and I was just walking out of an event, public event where I was speaking, and these two guys caught me in the parking lot, and one of them yells, "Hey, what's your problem?" I turned around and looked at him, and he was smiling, and I started walking closer, and the other guys are smiling. And it ends up being Chris Ihorn and Gerard Juarez, which is our founder, CEO, and co-founder. And they actually asked, they said, "Hey, we see you at all these different events. Why are you always here? What is your problem?" And I said, "My problem is I came from the military. I know what it's like to have money. I know what it's like to have technology. And right now we don't have anything. We need to get drones. We need to get this technology brought into public safety." And I believe it was Chris. He says, "Hey, is there any way we could go to a firehouse and write this out on a whiteboard?" So we actually drew out on the whiteboard what DroneSense V1 was, and we drew out all the problems that we were experiencing on a whiteboard. And Chris and Gerard, they took notes, and they went back because their ability to take an idea and create something wonderful. They created what we now have as DroneSense, and now both of us luckily work for. So that's how it was created, but it was from going to a public event.
Wow. That's awesome. I love hearing the story of how that comes together. And I've heard a little bit, but this adds even more light to it, and how, DroneSense is, it's made of subject matter experts. It's made of actual real, like working with like public safety to actually create this incredible situational awareness product. Absolutely amazing. And, I know DroneSense it's not just for fire. It's not just for law enforcement, for SAR. It's for all of this and kind of this whole encompassing like entity of public safety. And it's really fascinating to see. A question that I thought of when we were talking there was, when it comes to using drone technology and even DroneSense, but using like situational awareness technology too, or some of the other facets of what makes DroneSense, does it change some of the traditional firefighting tactics by using this technology? What's it like on the scene of a situation, or maybe even preparing for something, or before everyone leaves the station?
I mean, it's just like anything else in life, right? You're going to get out to go get groceries. You've got to have as much information in your head. I mean, it's simple. I mean, I know we're just taking this for granted, right? But hey, how much gas do I have in my car? Where am I going? How am I going to get there? Okay, what happens if I get into traffic? It's just information. It's all we're doing. We're just processing information. It's no different for, with us in an emergency scene is, can we take in that information, and is that information usable? Is that information in a way that we can process it? Because if it is, then we can take all that information and make really good decisions from it. Is it timely information? Okay, if it is, then we can make good decisions from it. And that's the idea behind the use of this technology, is it's a way to gather in great information, make it timely so we can make good informed decisions. So it is absolutely changing the way that we do business in the military, as everybody's aware of what's happening in Ukraine and the way this is advanced. In a way, it's advancing us here throughout the rest of the world in public safety response. More information, better decisions.
Nice. And again, this is like, currently it's October, it's Fire Prevention Month, right? And this is, what would you say in these, like this tactic and all the information you're absorbing before you go on the scene? Is there anything that you would say to maybe not just prevention, but maybe prevention and on your way there? What would you say here with using this technology or tools?
For emergency response, we have before the event, we have during the event, and we have after the event. So if we're thinking of it that way, and we're thinking before the event, the prevention side of it, using this technology, and I'm using technology, I'm not going to just say drones. And then when I'm using that, I'm being careful with that. Using this technology to gather information and share that with people is imperative. So when we do show up, we're better informed. So I'm going to use my cell phone as an example. If I'm using something called mobile streaming and tracking, okay, it's what we're able to use here. With mobile streaming and tracking, I can actually drop markers that have coordinates on them. So I can drop a marker anywhere I'm going with a coordinate. And if I can drop that marker perhaps on an area that needs fuel mitigation, meaning I need to go in and remove a bunch of trees that are too close to a home or too close to a building, or I have a homeless encampment that I have to pay attention to, or I have an area that is maybe with the storms has been washed away and I need to put a pin in it.
Maybe like a no-fly zone, even like you can't put up a drone near a jail or something in that regard. Would you say that too?
Yeah, I would absolutely say that. I think just using this to help us make these good decisions, to your point, is, okay, where can't I operate? And why can't I, when I show up, what do I need to be thinking about? Perhaps I can't show up and because it's raining too hard to be able to put a drone up, but I can still use the technology that I have here as I'm going down the road and shared my video feed from my phone out to the same screen the drones can show up on when the feed come back on. So it's preventing that. I'll use wildland response.
Yeah, tell us more about that. That's actually really fascinating.
In the beautiful state that you're in Colorado, God's country there, you have this tremendous threat of wildland-urban interface, right? So it's the wildland, us humans moving into the wildland area, and then the conflagration fires and is creating terrible situations for everyone. The ability that we have currently through these drones and through this technology to be able to go out and evaluate how much density we have, how much fuel load we have based off of what we can see in the sky. Because as you know, I mean, if you and I were just walking through the woods, we're going to see trees and then we're going to forget that there are even trees there. We're going to be walking through. We're not paying attention to the density of it. But that density is what will really get us in trouble. The health of those trees that will get us in trouble. It's the interface close to a community that will get us in trouble. So if we can use these drones to go out and evaluate the fuel load, the density, the health, the area that we have between the wildland interface with our communities, we can then make good informed decisions on what we need to do to help reduce the fuel load, to reduce the fires. So by taking these drones out before and using them for prevention, taking out before the fire, we can do all these measurements, working with our biologists, working with the fire prescription specialists, the guys that go out and actually cut these trees or burn these trees to kind of reduce the fuel loads. we can then prevent these terrible fires from taking place. Cal Fire, Colorado, Utah, Idaho, they're all doing it. And it is very critical that we help Mother Nature out. So when the lightning strike comes and it sets everything on fire, that it doesn't burn our communities down with us. So emergency egress, that's another area that you don't think about. But during prevention, if you can figure out different ways of getting people in and out of an area based off aerial photography or aerial imagery, then you can give people a better idea of how to get themselves out of a bad situation. And it's hard to see when you're just on the ground level. There's a lot to be done. I'm going to take it one step further because this is going to be, we're saying wildland. Now I'm going to go to the East Coast in prevention. So on the West Coast, we've got a lot of fires. That's what Fire Prevention Month, but we're being the fire department. We do a lot of different things. How about shark watches? Prevention. We're talking about preventing harm. So if we can prevent harm because we can see the sharks coming in, or in a situation, if we can see all the fish that the sharks feed on coming in, which is a big thing FDNY, NYPD, Office of Emergency Management are doing all throughout the summers, is they're actually watching the schools of fish come in, watching the sharks come in after them, and making sure that the human beings are away from them. So there's a lot we can do with these drones just from that aerial perspective that we couldn't do just a couple years ago.
It's really interesting, and it's in the whole situational awareness that the DroneSense brings, and that is how you manage or help prevent and so on. It really comes down to perspective in multiple fronts, right? Perspective on the ground, perspective in the air, like working together with both this IMSAT feature that we're talking about. It is a multiple forms of perspective. Is there any particular scenarios with this that really come to mind by utilizing both of them at the same time?
Yeah, something you and I both like to go to, music events. That's a great one, man. You and I both like music, right? So if we're going to show up at a big concert and I've got this in the pockets of my guys that are walking around, so I know exactly where they're at. And if they see something and need to put a marker on it, they can do it. Or if they need to see something and share the video feed, they can do it. But then we could also have the drones overhead. So to prevent people being stomped into the ground, because we've all seen these terrible stories or heard these terrible stories of crowds running over people, right? Let's say we have a music event and there's a fire. We have a music event and there's an active attack. We have a music event and there's a storm that automatically comes in, blah, 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 blah. We want to be able to see the movement of people. We want to know where we have to go to be able to open the gates. We want to be able to send in the right people to help. So during any of these events with large groups of people, we could say protest. You want to prevent somebody from getting hurt. You want to allow people to protest. You need a drone up to see where everybody's at and make sure that everybody's safe. See where everybody's moving. So Fire Prevention Week is, it says fire in the front of it, but we're talking about sharks. We're talking about music events, large scale events. We're talking about wildfires. It can be used in all these different areas. The technology can be used in all these different areas. And this technology, information gathering technology, and that's what a drone is really key to us moving forward in making our world a little bit safer.
Excellent, Coitt. Now, with everything you're speaking to, I'm sure there's got to be some really memorable experiences that came your way. Could be good, bad, interesting, fun, music festival, all sorts of different things. Is there something that is really memorable that drones and drone technology and on-the-ground forces, this combination of situational awareness, really played a key role in the success of a firefighting operation?
A lot of times you remember your first, right? You remember the first time you're on a roller coaster. You remember the first time you're driving. I have a lot of firsts. There's a lot of things I don't remember specifically because it's just so much information that gets put in there. The first big disaster I went to was the Wimberley floods in a place called Wimberley, Texas. And that one really stood out because that was my first disaster that I had went to using drones. The big part here was that I learned so much from that is how can we take this information in and do something good with it? And my mentor is a guy named Gene Robinson. I call him the godfather of drones. Gene was doing drones long before we had ever considered it. And Gene wrote a book before we had ever gotten our program together. And Gene just shared this knowledge with all of us on, hey, how do you take this information and do something good with it? So we went out and we flew after the terrible floods, much like they're experiencing in North Carolina. We did the rescue effort, and then we did the recovery piece of it, right? And I think it was one of my most memorable ones because, again, it was one of my first. But I also got to see how we were all able to come together as a team very quickly and use this technology for this at the first time. And we were using manned and unmanned. So we were coordinating with helicopters flying around, and we were using drones, fixed wings, and rotary wing aircraft. And this is back in the day, bro. And it was such a memorable time to just imprint on my team and myself on what this could do for command, what this could do for the community. So what's happening in North Carolina right now is going to be over, hopefully sooner than later, for those poor people. But they're going to need to rebuild. So not only did we do the rescue piece and then that recovery piece, but while we were doing that recovery, we were gathering all this information and we were able to produce maps with that we were then able to give back to the community, and the community could then use that to help them in their future and to also memorialize it. So that was probably my most memorable time, just to really see how it kind of all got started for our group here locally in Central Texas.
Nice. Well said. And that wraps up the first part of our conversation with Coitt Kessler. We've covered a lot of ground from the early days of drone adoption and firefighting to the current applications in various emergency scenarios. Join us next time for part 2, where we'll dive deeper into the future of drone technology and firefighting, including AI integration and the concept of teaming between humans and machines. Thanks for listening to DroneCast, rethinking public safety one drone at a time. I'm Joe Kearns, and we'll see you in part 2.
DroneCast, rethinking public safety one drone at a time, is brought to you by DroneSense. To find out more about DroneSense and how our comprehensive situational awareness platform can help you fly, share, and manage your drone program, please visit DroneSense.com. That's DroneSense.com. And then make sure to search for DroneCast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else that podcasts are found. Please don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at DroneSense, thanks for listening.